And joining me now is Mark Garnett, a politics specialist from Lancaster University in the UK. Mark, for people outside of the UK, it seems the British leader is in a seemingly unwinnable position. But in the last couple of hours, both Michael Gove and Liam Fox have indicated that they're going to stay put. But so as a result, do you think she's going to be able to stay in the job?
Well, in many ways, the perspective of people outside the UK is the one that's shared by people within the UK, that facing her isn't just unrest within her party, it's also a parliament which seems to be certainly on the evidence of yesterday when Mrs May spoke for 3 hours against a barrage of hostile questions. It seems very unlikely that Mrs May at present can get her deal through Parliament. So this seems to be an impossible position. And what Mrs May has done is she's begun to appeal beyond her own party, beyond Parliament. And basically what she's saying to the voters is that this was the very best deal that could be achieved. If you want to have no deal, well, then reject Mrs May's deal. If you want perhaps have a second referendum, then pursue that course. But if you want a negotiated settlement, this is the best thing, she is arguing, that is available.
In your opinion, what would be the best scenario to emerge at this point in time?
It very much depends on where you sit, and I'm not allowed really to cover. We're in such a polarised situation. It's very difficult indeed to teach British politics without seeming to side with one or the other. All I would say is, from Mrs May's perspective, that the best solution is one which can gradually accumulate a body of people in what you would call the middle ground. Instead of people wanting one extreme rather than the other, what she'll be saying is this is a deal which does go as near as possible to fulfilling the referendum vote, while at the same time not putting Britain's economic prospects in jeopardy. Now, if you happen to believe in a very hard Brexit, you'll think that a no deal is actually quite a good thing and that there might be some economic problems, but that in the end Britain will benefit from it. I think unless you are really, really staunch one way or another, Mrs May's position does have, I think, a lot more going for it than the parliamentarians are suggesting. And it may well be, but parliamentarians are not very popular in Britain, and it might be that Mrs May's very stubborn, determined stand, which she says is in the national interest, that's the kind of thing that does appeal to people who are not committed firmly to one side or the other. So I wouldn't rule her out yet. Impossible though it might seem, I think she could still perform a Houdini act, and I think as much as anything, the British people love an underdog, and there couldn't be more of an underdog than Mrs May at the moment, and her enemies are actually helping her because they're creating the impression that she's almost being bullied. I think that is, over the next days, going to help her, and certainly I think that if she wins a challenge to her leadership, if she sees off her opponents, then they won't be able to challenge her again for another year. So I really do, my money would be, if anything, that Mrs May is in for quite a little time yet.
And Mark, your reaction there to my question also indicates just how divided the country has become.
Well, it has, and I mean, my own reading of it is that there's been an awful lot of changing from one side to another. I heard a figure the other day that 2 million leavers have become now remainers, 1 million remainers have become leavers. But I think underneath this, I think is a sense amongst those who wanted Britain to leave, a certain amount of desperation, because these were people who did promise the British public that it would be quite easy to leave the European Union. And again, without wanting to appear slanted against one side or another, I think it is simply a fact that the leaders of the Brexit campaign are now the ones who are under the most pressure, and they're falling out amongst themselves, and they're actually being more vitriolic, more hostile to one another than they are to the Labour Party. And it does more and more seem like a debate within the Conservative Party. And I think Mrs May is rising above this, or trying to rise above this. And as I say, that is her only chance. And as things stand, I think that the chance isn't a remote one. I think that the way things are playing out, she couldn't have wished for a better first day in a horrible nightmare scenario.
Mark Garnett from Lancaster University in the UK, thank you.